Okay, so we move on to the final of the four types, which is the reflector. So these are very rare at the moment. They're 1%, around 1% of the population, still millions of people. They're very rare. What makes them so rare is these are people who have absolutely no defined centers in their body graph at all. So they have no inner authority. They have an outer authority, which invariably is the moon. So their strategy is to wait for an entire cycle of the moon, which is between 28 and 29 days. And during that cycle, what happens for them is, even though they don't have any centers defined in their body graph, they will have gates defined in their body graph. And as the moon goes round through its transits, it will activate other gates in their body graph. And when the two gates at the end of a channel, so a gate that they have in their body graph, and the moon activates the gate at the other end of that channel, both of those centers activate and that channel comes into being. So at that point, and for that 10, 12 hours, whatever time that transit takes, a reflector has an idea of how they're going to operate. And that cycle remains the same. So it goes through the same cycle every time. So roughly repeats over every 12 months. So for most reflectors, the big challenge for them is, who am I? And more importantly, who am I today? And will I be accepted for who I am today? Because for these people, they don't have a defined G, so they have no idea of who they are and nothing internally to tell them who they are. So they are reliant on what is going on around them. So they're like the acid test, you know, where you dip a strip into water to see whether it's acid or alkaline. Reflectors reflect the environment around them. So if they're in the right environment, they will reflect that beautifully, and they will be correct if they're in the correct environment for them. If they are not in the correct environment for them, then they will become very disappointed with what's going on around them. And what's interesting is that in relationships with reflectors, what they tend to do is literally reflect back to the person they're with who they are. So interestingly, people are drawn to reflectors because they feel like they're falling in love with the reflector, when actually, because the reflector is reflecting them back, they're actually learning to love themselves. And that's actually why reflectors are here. Reflectors are here to help us as a species get better at recognizing ourselves and become better versions of ourselves. So they're lent to the very esoteric side of life. They make great spiritual teachers because they are literally just looking at what's going on around them, and they are reflecting it back. And by reflecting that back to other people and mirroring what's going on for them, they help the people they're reflecting it back to start to recognize things that they could change in themselves. And when they start to see people change as a result of them reflecting back, then they get what they're here to do, which is to surprise, to experience surprise. The surprise when they actually see somebody beginning to change and embrace their true opportunities, or their true character, or their true path. Because actually what they tend to see is how flawed humanity is, and so nothing really surprises them. So when they see someone breaking out of that conditioning, that's when they're truly surprised. So very rare, these people potentially could have deeply fulfilling lives or very disappointing lives. The key for them is to learn to understand what their 28, 29 day lunar cycle looks like, what processes they go through, and in terms of making decisions, go through the entire cycle before they make the decision, and then make the decision by having conversations with people that they trust around them, not so that they can necessarily hear what the other people are reflecting back to them, but so they can hear what they're saying themselves, so that then they can start to understand how they can make decisions that are right for them. Notable famous reflectors: Richard Burton and Sandra Bullock and Yul Brynner as well. So all of those people have had huge impacts on the society and the people that are around them, and many people have felt that they're better people for having those people in their lives. Again, having your ephemeral chart, your lunar chart cast, requires somebody with the knowledge to do that. And once you have that, you can begin as a reflector to understand how to navigate your life, and how where you experience different things on different days, because you may feel like one day to the next you're a different person, at least you'll understand why. And once you get that pattern, because it constantly repeats, there's a comfort in understanding that who I am today is okay, and I may be someone else tomorrow, and that's also okay. So as a reflector, I can get more used to being comfortable with who I am and not looking for anybody else to validate that.